I'm Claire Whitman, 41 years old. 3 weeks ago, at my father's retirement dinner in Hartford, Connecticut, he lifted a champagne glass in front of 70 people and said my cancer had been the most inconvenient season of his life. People laughed softly because they thought he was joking. I didn't laugh. There are sentences that do not break your heart loudly. They just confirm what your heart has known for years. What happened next changed the way my entire family looked at me, and more importantly, the way I looked at myself. And if you've ever been treated like your pain was a burden, stay with me. Not because this is a story about revenge. It isn't. It's about what happens when a quiet person finally brings receipts. Now let me take you back. My father, Richard Whitman, retired after 38 years as a senior partner at a private accounting firm in downtown Hartford. The dinner was held at a country club in West Hartford, the kind of place with cream tablecloths, polished floors, and waiters who moved like they had been trained not to disturb rich people's guilt. My mother, Judith, wore a navy St. John dress and the Cartier bracelet my father bought her for their 30th anniversary. My older brother, Daniel, arrived late in a black Tesla Model X, smiling like the room had been waiting for him. In a way, it had. Daniel was the golden child. He was charming, expensive, irresponsible, and somehow always forgiven before he even apologized. I was the practical one, the dependable one, the daughter who remembered birthdays, handled paperwork, booked doctor appointments, drove my parents to airport terminals, and said, "It's okay," even when it wasn't. That night, my place card was near the back, between my cousin's second husband and an old neighbor who kept asking if I was still doing hospital work. Daniel sat at the family table beside my parents. I noticed it. Of course I noticed it. But I had spent most of my adult life training my face not to react. Halfway through dinner, my father stood to give his speech. He thanked his firm. He thanked his clients. He thanked Daniel for carrying the Whitman name into the next generation, even though Daniel's last business had collapsed after 18 months. Then my father looked toward me. For one strange second, I thought he might say something kind. Instead, he smiled and said, "And of course, Claire gave us that little scare with cancer a few years back. I'll tell you, nothing tests a family like a daughter who turns every holiday into a hospital update." The room chuckled. My mother lowered her eyes, but she smiled. Daniel smirked into his wine glass. My father continued, "But she survived, thank God. And now we can finally stop talking about it." That was the line. Not the worst line they had ever said to me. Just the clearest. I sat very still. The fork in my hand rested against the plate. The candlelight moved across the silverware. Somewhere behind me, someone cleared their throat. My father raised his glass. "To family," he said. And for the first time in my life, I did not raise mine. Here's what you need to understand. My cancer was not a family crisis. It was treated like a scheduling inconvenience. I was diagnosed on February 3, 2021, at Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston. Stage 2 Hodgkin lymphoma. The doctor was kind, direct, and careful with his words. I remember staring at his pen while he explained the treatment plan, because looking at his face made the room feel too real. 6 cycles of chemotherapy, PET scans, blood work, nausea, hair loss, a port placed under my collarbone. Months of fatigue so deep it felt like gravity had doubled. I called my mother from the parking garage. She answered on the 4th ring. When I said, "Mom, it's cancer," there was a pause. Then she said, "Are you sure?" As if I might have misunderstood the word. My father called later that night. He was calm, almost formal. "Well," he said, "you've always been strong." That was his version of comfort, a compliment that also gave him permission not to show up. Daniel sent a text the next morning. "That's terrible. Keep us posted." 3 words too many, somehow. At first, I believed they were just shocked. I told myself people react badly to fear. I made excuses because daughters like me are trained to translate neglect into personality differences. But treatment has a way of making truth visible. During my first infusion, my best friend Mara sat beside me for 5 hours while red medication moved through a clear tube into my chest. She brought ginger candies, a blanket, and a notebook, because she said we were going to write down everything the doctors said. My mother said she couldn't come because she had a hair appointment she had already rescheduled once. My father said parking in Boston was a nightmare. Daniel said hospitals made him uncomfortable. Over the next 7 months, I had 42 medical appointments. My family attended too. Both times my mother left early. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The abandonment was not only emotional, it was financial too. My grandmother, Eleanor, had left me $80,000 in a separate medical and education trust when she died. She had been a nurse. She knew illness could ruin a person faster than grief could. The trust was supposed to help with emergencies. My father was listed as temporary trustee until I turned 35, and because I trusted him, I never rushed to change the paperwork. That was my mistake. In March 2021, after my second chemo session, I called my father and asked about accessing part of the trust. My insurance covered much, but not everything. My unpaid leave had started. Rent in Boston did not pause, because my white blood cells were low. He told me not to worry. "We'll handle it," he said. 2 weeks later, my card declined at CVS when I tried to pick up anti-nausea medication. I remember standing under fluorescent lights with a scarf wrapped around my head, pretending to search my purse while the pharmacist looked away politely. That night, I checked the trust account. The balance was $11,482. There should have been more than $80,000. I called my father. My hands were shaking so hard I had to sit on the bathroom floor. He sighed, like I was being unreasonable. "Daniel needed bridge money for the restaurant," he said. I thought I had misheard him. "You used my medical trust?" "It wasn't only medical," he said. "Grandma left that for me. And you're not the only person in this family with needs." There it was. The family constitution, spoken plainly. Daniel's dreams were needs. My survival was an expense. I asked how much he took. He said, "Around 68,000. Around." As if he had misplaced an umbrella. When I told my mother, she said, "Your father did what he thought was best." When I told Daniel, he said, "I'll pay it back when things stabilize." The restaurant closed 4 months later. He never paid back $1. If you're still watching, maybe you know this feeling. The moment when you stop being surprised, and that is somehow worse than being hurt. I kept going. I went to chemo. I worked part-time from my couch. I threw up into a stainless steel mixing bowl because I was too weak to reach the bathroom. I learned which foods tasted like metal. I learned that silence has different weights, depending on who is absent from it. On June 18th, after my 4th cycle, I developed a fever and had to go to the emergency room. Neutropenic fever. Dangerous, the kind they warn you about. Mara was out of state for her sister's wedding, so I called home. My mother answered. I said, "I need someone to come." She was quiet. Then I heard music in the background. They were at Daniel's engagement party. "Claire," she said softly, "we can't rearrange everything every time you have a complication. Every time." I had asked them for help once. I said nothing. She added, "You're strong. You'll manage." I hung up. That night, I sat alone in an ER bay at 2:14 a.m., wearing a paper mask and a hospital bracelet, watching a nurse tape an IV to my arm. I did not cry. Not because I was brave, because I finally understood the terms. Family, for them, meant I showed up. It did not mean they had to. The next year, I went into remission. No big celebration, no family dinner, no tearful reunion. My mother sent a thumbs-up emoji. My father wrote, "Good news." Daniel asked if I knew anyone who could help him refinance his debt. Something changed in me after that. Quietly. No announcement. No dramatic cutoff. No screaming phone call. I rebuilt. I moved from Boston to Providence for a director role in healthcare compliance. I learned hospital billing systems, charitable care law, insurance appeals, donor fund restrictions, and board governance. I became very good at understanding documents people hoped no one would read, especially financial documents. By 2024, I was Vice President of Compliance at Northbridge Health Foundation, a nonprofit that funded cancer treatment support across New England. I wore simple black suits, low heels, and a silver watch Mara gave me after my final scan. My hair grew back darker and softer. My body was different, but it was mine. My life was quieter, but it was honest. I went to therapy every other Thursday. I learned that forgiveness is not the same as access. I learned that boundaries do not need applause. And slowly, I stopped checking my phone for apologies that were never coming. Then, in January 2026, my father called. Not to ask how I was, to ask for help. Daniel had started a new venture, a private recovery wellness clinic in New Haven. It looked legitimate from the outside. Clean website, elegant branding, words like holistic oncology support and integrative healing pathways. My father said Daniel was applying for a partnership grant through Northbridge. I felt my body go still. "Is that why you're calling?" I asked. He paused. "Well, Claire, this could be good for everyone." There it was again. Everyone. A word that had never included me. I told him all applications went through formal review. He laughed lightly. "Don't be difficult. Just make sure it lands on the right desk." "My desk is the wrong desk for favors," I said. His voice cooled. "After everything this family has done for you, I'd think you'd want to help." I looked at the framed photo on my shelf. Mara and me outside Mass General after my last treatment. My face pale. My smile tired. Alive. I said, "Send the paperwork through the portal." Then I hung up. 2 weeks later, Daniel's application arrived. And that was when the story changed. At first, I treated it like any other review. I assigned a preliminary compliance check. I did not touch the scoring. I did not interfere. But documents tell stories. Daniel's clinic claimed it had served 312 cancer patients in 6 months. The tax filings showed revenue from only 47 clients. The application listed a medical director who had resigned 3 months earlier. The patient support fund included restricted donations that, according to bank records, had been moved into operating expenses. And then I saw a familiar name. Eleanor Whitman Memorial Support Fund. My grandmother's name. Daniel had used her name for a donor campaign. He had raised $96,000 under a fund supposedly created to help low-income cancer patients with transportation, medication, and treatment-related bills. Only $8,400 had gone to patients. The rest had gone to consulting fees, marketing, leasehold improvements, and one vehicle reimbursement that matched the monthly payment on Daniel's Tesla. I sat in my office for a long time, not angry, not surprised, just deeply, deeply tired. Here's the part I need you to hear. I did not want to destroy my brother. I did not want to humiliate my parents. I wanted the truth to stop being expensive for everyone except them. So I followed procedure. I documented every discrepancy. I notified internal counsel. I recused myself from the funding decision because of family connection. I filed a conflict of interest memo. I preserved the records. I did exactly what policy required. Quietly, carefully, legally. A week before my father's retirement dinner, Northbridge scheduled a board review. Daniel's clinic was denied funding pending investigation. Donor misuse concerns were referred to state charity regulators. My father found out before the dinner. That was why he made the joke. Not because he was careless, because he was punishing me publicly while pretending it was humor. At the country club, after his speech, I excused myself and walked to the restroom. I stood in front of the mirror under warm gold lighting and looked at my own face. For years, I had mistaken calm for weakness. That night, calm became evidence. When I returned to the room, dessert had been served. My father was moving from table to table, accepting congratulations. Daniel stood near the bar, whispering sharply into his phone. My mother watched me with that warning look she used when I was a child. "Don't embarrass us. Don't make this hard. Don't tell the truth where people can hear it." I picked up my handbag and walked toward the family table. My father saw me coming and smiled for the room. "There she is," he said. "Our survivor." The word sounded borrowed in his mouth. I said quietly, "Dad, we need to talk." He leaned closer, still smiling. "Not now." "Yes," I said, "now." Daniel turned. "Claire, don't start." I looked at him. "I haven't started anything." The table went still. My mother whispered, "This is not the place." I opened my bag and removed a slim navy folder. "No," I said. Hospitals were not the place. Emergency rooms were not the place. My medical trust was not the place. But this room seems appropriate. My father's smile disappeared. I placed the first document on the table. "This is Grandmother Eleanor's trust agreement. $80,000 designated for my medical, educational, and emergency needs." I placed the second page beside it. "This is the withdrawal record. $68,500 transferred while I was in chemotherapy." Daniel's face hardened. "Claire," he said, "you're really doing this?" I kept my voice even. This is not a performance. It's a correction. My mother looked around, terrified of witnesses. Lower your voice, she said. I am speaking normally. That was true. The quiet made it worse. People nearby had stopped eating. A waiter froze beside the coffee station. My cousins stared at the table, as if the documents might catch fire. I placed down the third set. These are Daniel's grant materials submitted to Northbridge. These are the patient numbers he claimed. These are the bank records showing restricted donor funds being moved into general expenses. Daniel stepped forward. You had no right to access that. I didn't access anything privately. Your clinic submitted it for review. My father's voice dropped into the tone he used with junior employees. You are crossing a line. I looked at him then, really looked, at the man who found Boston parking too inconvenient while his daughter sat alone with poison moving through her veins. No, I said. I am showing you where the line was. Silence followed. Not dramatic silence. Real silence. The kind where glasses stop moving. The kind where people suddenly become aware of their own breathing. The kind where a family system built on pretending finally runs out of air. My father looked down at the papers. For the first time that night, he looked old. My mother's eyes filled, but not with grief, with exposure. Daniel whispered, "You're going to ruin me." I shook my head. No, Daniel, I'm not ruining you. I'm refusing to fund the version of you that ruins other people. My father said my name once. Claire. It almost sounded like a request, maybe even regret. But regret at being seen is not the same as remorse. I closed the folder. Then I said the 4 words I had carried for years without knowing it. You chose my absence. No one answered. I picked up my coat from the back of the chair. I did not rush. I did not cry. I did not look around to measure who believed me. At the doorway, my father called after me. You're still my daughter. I turned back, and I was your daughter in the hospital. Then I walked out. The air outside was cold and clean. The valet asked if I needed my car. I said yes. My voice was steady, my hands were steady. The night sky over Hartford was clear, and for once, I did not feel like I had survived something by accident. The fallout came quietly at first. Daniel's clinic lost its pending partnerships. The state opened a charity funds inquiry. 2 board members resigned. My father's firm removed him from an advisory committee 3 days after his retirement because several former clients had been in that room. My mother sent one message. You humiliated your father. I stared at it for a while. Then I replied, he did that himself. She didn't answer. A week later, my father emailed me. No subject line. It said, I didn't know you felt abandoned. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because some people call it not knowing when they mean not wanting to know. I wrote back one sentence. You were told in real time. Then I blocked him for 30 days. Not forever. Just long enough to let my nervous system learn that peace would not be punished. If you've ever had to create distance from people who only loved you when you were useful, you are not alone. Drop a comment if you know what it feels like to be called cold, just because you finally stopped burning yourself to keep others warm. 6 months have passed. I still live in Providence. I still work in healthcare compliance. I still go to therapy every other Thursday. Mara and I have dinner on Sundays. She makes too much pasta. I bring flowers. We joke that chosen family is mostly people who remember your appointments and don't make your survival about themselves. My hair is shoulder length now. My scans are clear. My apartment has plants in every window and a blue chair by the bookshelf where morning light lands around 7. Sometimes, grief still visits. It comes when I see mothers holding daughters' hands in oncology waiting rooms. It comes when a father carefully folds a blanket over his sleeping child. It comes when someone says, your family must be so proud. I used to correct them. Now I just say, I'm proud. That is enough. My father's line from that retirement dinner still returns sometimes. The most inconvenient season of his life. But now I hear it differently. Because my illness was not inconvenient. Their lack of love was. My survival did not embarrass the family. It exposed it. And the daughter who once begged to be treated like she mattered no longer applies for that position. I matter now. Without permission. Without applause. Without raising my voice. If this resonated with you, share your story in the comments. Someone reading it may need to know they are not alone. And if you want more calm, emotional stories about boundaries, family, and quiet strength, subscribe before you go. My name is Claire Whitman. I survived the treatment. I survived the silence. And now, finally, I belong to myself.